Flag salute. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we'll start with the consent agenda. Guess I would start with, are there any questions concerning the consent agenda? Any corrections to the minutes? Or questions about the minutes?
Well, I would make a motion, since I don't hear anything, that we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Hearing made and seconded. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I'm thinking no visitors this week, per se. So, we will move down to instructional and learning.
They have nothing this time, and they have something in November.
Yeah, I think it is. It just says other, and it's a placeholder, and very good technology. Any others? No. Moving right along.
So I have something
Oh,
I wanna say under
under
technology,
Okay.
and that is, Dominic's in a place where he's kinda working around the clock with us, because we've made some shifts in our proficiency-based learning system, and there's a lot of reporting on his end that's been happening, so I wanna commend him for the amount of work that he's been putting into that, and there's also a shift in terms of how we're doing end-of-the-year reporting at the state level. And there were some glitches in that system throughout the state, so that has been pushed back and is now kind of under a real time crunch. And he's, I just want you to hear how much of a committed employee he is. He's here working really hard to try to meet our deadline to get all of those reports in, and it's, he doesn't say no to us when something needs to happen, he just finds a way to make it happen, so, thank you, Dominic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Special programs?
There's nothing at this
There's
time.
one personnel under special programs. The Richford Board last night voted to allow its staff to donate sick time to a special educator in their building. The special educator is actually your employee. So if you're so inclined, we would need a motion from this board as well, both to allow SU staff to donate time and to allow this person to accept time. It's Jim Rainville. The Richford Board last night said 2 days per person,
Up to 20 days
up to 20 days.
total.
Questions, discussion? Hearing very little discussion. Somebody with a motion? On behalf of this, for the SU,
I'll make that motion.
motion made.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Any more questions? All clear? Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Anything else under, so, moving right along, Morgan, I think you're up next.
Okay. First two items were informational. No updates yet on the audit. The only other item that I wanted to put in your lap is the FY20 budget building process. I plan to bring your first draft to your November meeting, second draft in December. Normally, we've been able to finalize it by that date. If we can't, we will have a January 7th meeting on the books right now, and we can finalize that meeting. Unlike the town level, there's not gonna be as many changes at the SU level, other than we don't know who we're gonna assess the budget out to yet. But that's really something we can do right at the end. The big changes from this year, I will still show food service at the SU level, but we'll actually start spending that at the SU level going forward. And then I wanted to put the idea out in front of you, if we do move to a 2-district supervisory union rather than 5, if you want to change the way that we're allocating transportation, Act 153 of 6, 7, 10 years ago, moved transportation costs to the SU and all the reimbursement goes to the SU. What we've done in the past is gone through the contract and said, okay, Berkshire, these 4 routes are yours, and so you're paying that bill. Richard, your routes are here, and split it out that way. The other model is to just do it on a straight allocation. It may allow for some flexibility in terms of, in the future, doing routes that overlap town boundaries, rather than saying, these are Berkshire routes, these are Enosburg routes. But I don't have anything specific in mind that I can point to towards that. The other wrinkle we would want to think about is for your routes that are for kids outside of the supervisory unit. So Enosburg currently sends a bus to Sheldon to pick up tuition kids. And so that would be something either we want to hold separate, or it may be a reason that we don't want to go that route yet. I don't need a decision on that tonight. Again, transportation costs are what they are, and we already have that figured out. It'll just be how we do the assessment in the end.
Now, would this change the next year? My understanding was we have one more full year of contract that's
It
set.
wouldn't change the contract. And you're right, we're in the second of 33 years in this current contract.
Right.
So it would look the same for the vendor, and right now.
It's just a matter of how it divvies up.
Right,
Yeah.
because we're cutting the vendor a check each month from the SU,
Right.
and then we're dividing that up to you guys.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, could you do an example of both ways, maybe just using numbers as of today? So when we do get to discuss that, we might see how at least today's scenario looks.
Yep. Depending on what the state board does, the Sheldon issue may be yours anyway. But yeah, I can do that.
Well, that would simplify the Enosburg having a bus route and nobody else having a bus route in Sheldon, because they would be part of the SU, so we think, potentially.
I don't know if simplify is the word that I would use. Yes.
Just think how many less meetings you'll be going to 10 years from now. Very good. Do you have any others?
This is a great time if you guys have in the back of your mind some new initiative at the SU that you want to see in the first draft of the budget, because once you see the November number, you're not going to want the December number to be a lot higher than that. There's nothing that we've got on our radar. We'll probably look at moving a little bit more of Jen and Jody into the local budget as we anticipate that the grant will continue to go down that funds them. There are big changes coming in terms of special ed reimbursement, but those will not affect the FY20 budget. It will kick in the next year.
It would kick in the next year.
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of early in the year, the legislative year. I mean, I don't know what kind of things that you're hearing from Department of Ed or whatever, that they'd like to change these things and those will affect us, but it's really too early to really know much there.
Yeah, we don't generally get
Yeah.
that much of a warning
Yeah.
when those things are.
They wait until your budgets are final and they say, oh, we're changing.
I will say, it seems like all of the educational advocacy groups are on the same page, going to the legislature with the message, can you please just not change anything for a couple of
Right.
years and let's figure out everything that you have changed. With the mergers coming online in July, unless there's a push to do something big to the funding formula, like moving it off the property tax, I don't see them rolling out anything and getting it through the legislature.
I would
Yeah.
like to not see that.
From
I'm hoping to not see that.
From a, there again, a budget standpoint, what's the governor's office saying at this point about level funding, or, you know, are you hearing anything about, you know, like cutting 2% or, you know?
I think everybody at the AOE is working on supporting the state board in terms of their merger plan. And so I haven't heard nothing about like the December 1st letter that set the rate, anything like that.
Okay,
I do expect that the governor will be pushing a discussion towards ratios in some fashion, and whether that we're only gonna fund a certain FTE per kid or something like that. I imagine that that's gonna be what he pushes out there.
That's saying he's our governor after November,
Correct?
whatever.
well, any other questions for Morgan, or quiet tonight, quiet, very good. Lynn? We'll move right on into,
We're flying right along tonight.
yeah,
So I don't have anything under personnel because we took care of that under the special ed piece. In terms of negotiations, I've already said this to all of you in your local board meetings, but we have a kind of a goal-setting meeting for our leaders, our board members and leaders next week, 23rd, I believe, here. And we don't have any updates because we haven't really started with the teachers yet, other than we're getting ready to start. I'm gonna go through some administrative negotiations pieces for you, but that's gonna require us to go into executive. So I'd like to take that out of order, push that to the bottom, and finish up the rest of the stuff. So I wanna talk a little bit about a hiring update. So we talked at the September meeting about Shirley retiring this year. And you accepted her letter of resignation. So my intention is to start that, get that advertised in early November and start doing the search in that November, December timeline. So I didn't know if there was someone on this board that wanted to be a part of that hiring process. Or I could shoot an email out when I get a schedule. I'm not looking for a group, but if there's maybe there's a few things I'm gonna talk about. So if you have an interest, communicate that with me. So the second piece is that Morgan and I talked about timeline for food service director. We think we're gonna advertise that at the start of the year in January, and we'll look at it, you know, a January, February hiring process for that position. And I'm not sure how many of you know that when I started on this role, we had a position that was unfilled at my office. It was the position of executive administrative assistant to the superintendent. So we took that position and reshaped who was doing what at the central office, and I really wanted to get a sense of, do we need that position, or are there things that we could do ourselves, or is there a different position we want instead of that? So I've now spent over a year in this role, and we've been trying to navigate through and take on the pieces that we can take on. One of the things I'd originally thought about was revenue generating position, someone working on some grant stuff. So I was able to shift some things around when Maria Gleason got done, and we hired Heather Moore. I was able to take the homeless liaison piece off that position, and now Roxanne Tanner has that, and Morgan's part of the office, and Heather is doing some grant writing for us on top of the after-school grant stuff. So I feel like that piece has been taken care of. But we're at a place where we've taken on a lot of work, and in terms of efficiency and us having the capacity to keep moving forward, I need to fill that position upstairs. So my intention will be to advertise for that soon get someone in there, and it won't be someone that will be just available to me. It'll be someone, I'm gonna be looking for the right kind of candidate. It won't just be, I'm looking for someone who is really savvy with communication. They have to be an excellent writer. They have to be tech savvy. I want them to be doing some community outreach, communication for our organization, as well as helping with some of the things that we've all taken on in this time period to free us all up to do more of the educational leadership pieces that we're struggling to find time for. So timeline for that one, I'm thinking soon. I'm thinking I want to get that advertised by the end of this month and start that hiring process. We have that money already in our budget. We haven't used anything from the first part of this year, so I won't be looking to push that into next year's budget. I would like to hire someone when we find the right candidate for this year to move into that role.
You don't think you should wait
Or
to find out what the state decides?
we wouldn't make an offer before that. We could be in that hiring process.
Do you think that the mergers are going to free up significant amounts of time?
Is that a trick question?
Yeah, it is, sort of.
I don't actually. I think it's going to ramp up what it is that we're trying to do at central office. I think that has the capacity down the road to lighten the load in terms of the board prep that I'm doing now and managing now. But in terms of the work that we want to try to do around curriculum and developing leaders and developing teachers, I don't see that lessening. I see the transition especially if we gain another school into the organization. I think it's going to be more than less.
Overseeing.
Yeah. So I don't anticipate we're losing any schools. I think we all kind of expect that maybe we'll gain one.
I'm amazed you've made it this long without the position, honestly, and think you've stretched yourself pretty thin. So I think this was something we probably should have done a while ago.
I've maybe had that feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you know exactly what you need versus inheriting
Right.
something that you might not have needed.
Right.
So you want us to consider that as we do our... Well, you would like an okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would, and I'd like to get started sooner rather than later with that one. Hey, Charlie.
Hi. Hello.
So are you looking for a motion?
Well, I actually don't even know that we need a motion. This is already a position that you've approved. It's in your budget. I told you last year that I wanted to not lose the position because I wasn't sure yet what we were gonna need. Now I'm sure, so I really wanted to let you know that we're in that place. The money's already there. That position was approved in last year's budget. So I just wanna move forward with hiring, unless there's a major objection. So I'll throw that out there for the hiring process for that as well, if people are interested. So we have those 3 positions that we're going to start. And if you know people that you think would be good in those positions, I'm looking at you, Ms. Trombley. You might owe me one. Just let me know.
Yeah.
So I've already talked with each of the local boards about the Act 46 update. I don't have anything new that's come out. It's tricky for me to know what to put on this board agenda because I've met with some of you, over a week ago. Some of you, we were together last night in Richford and Bakersfield. So there's nothing additional that we've learned about where the state board is other than I think since we were in our first meetings last week in Montgomery, we have learned that they have added a date in October,
End of October.
right? That's really the only new information. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about where we are with Act 46. One thing I will say is that the Berkshire Bakersfield Unified Board has been plugging ahead and doing some work planning forward for next year. And they have invited the board chairs of Montgomery and Sheldon to start attending those meetings, just so that they can start hearing what's going on, not with any kind of, we're coming because we know this is going to happen, but that there's a potential that this could happen. And we did have the Sheldon board chair join us at our last meeting, and I felt like we had some productive conversations, and I thought that went well.
Well, for instance, what about Sheldon's administrators, you know?
I have not reached out yet. We're in that situation where it's an unknown, so I'm not looking to step too far at all,
Yeah.
because I just want the state to make the decision, and then I will certainly reach out. But I feel like that would be, it's not my place to reach out there until we know. I think that would be a misstep.
Okay.
So, and then the last thing I have is the administrator negotiations piece. So we will need to go into executive to do negotiations. Before we do that, I will tell you that you have 3 administrators here, plus myself, that you'll be negotiating with. I have a summary form for all of you. We can choose to take them one at a time. You could call them in if you have questions for them, or we can ask one person to stay and the rest to go and just take it one at a time. You want them to all step out first?
Yep,
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I think so.
Is there, how many,
Well-
only 3 to do this
So
budget?
you're going to, you don't have a ton to talk about, but you have, on tonight, we're gonna talk about Daybell, McAllister, Gagne, DeRoja, Valancourt, and Coda.
Okay, so all of them are up to.
You're gonna talk about Kennison in November, or is this gonna be in a different month? All administrators are up.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well,
Well-
and one's a new hire, so that will be it, so, yes.
So I'll make a motion, we go into executive session to talk about negotiation.
I'll second it.
So made and seconded.
I'll pop out and get you
All those in
guys.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now, executive.